welcome to the weekly WoW news. I'm Mox. Good to have you here. This week has been an interesting one with a couple of the events that we talked about last week actually now taking place within the WoW community as a whole. The biggest one of which we tuned into this week was, of course, the MDI, the Mythic Dungeon International, which I have been calling the Mythic Dungeon Invitational for, like, my entire life. But no, it is the Mythic Dungeon International, so apologies to everyone who has corrected me and I have blatantly said, no, I'm right and you're wrong. According to their logo, it is the International. Some interesting things came out of it though this week in terms of Mythic Plus compositions, and there's a full article that you can view over on WOWHEAD. Link to that in the description below. But some of the major things that have come out of it is obviously the domination of the Vengeance Demon Hunter tank. Now, we knew from the very get-go that Vengeance Demon Hunter was going to absolutely dominate this season. There was no reason it wasn't going to. Strong self-healing, great AoE ability. It is a solid class for a Mythic Plus setting. What is interesting though is how healers have been portrayed. See, according to the WoWhead article, and confirmed by my own viewing of the streams throughout the week, there's been a pretty big representation of healers within the dungeons. The only healer that we haven't seen is Holy Priest, and that makes sense. Holy Priest has always been a much better raid healer than Discipline has been, and Discipline, depending on the affixes, is very, very strong in Mythic Plus. Now, some affixes absolutely destroy Discipline healing, but with some of the tweaks that they've had, they can deal with those much better at a pro level. But at a pro level, if you've got some of the more difficult affixes to deal with as Discipline, it makes sense to just not take a Discipline Priest. These are the best players in the world, and a 1% increase to their throughput, to their damage throughput, or their healing throughput is a significant advantage over a team that doesn't have that 1% increase. But we've still seen quite a good representation. So far, according to the WoWhead article, we've seen 10 Resto Shamans, 4 Resto Druids, 3 Holy Pallies, 2 Discipline Priests, and 1 Mistweaver Monk, making Mistweaver the least represented, followed by Discipline, with the Restoration Shaman actually the most represented. But the interesting part isn't the class makeup. We knew going in that Resto Shaman was going to be strong. We knew going in that Resto Druid was always going to be strong. We knew going in that Holy Pally was going to be strong. What we didn't foresee is the Covenant mix-up. You see, as a DPS player, your Covenant choice effectively defines your entire rotation. As a tank, your Covenant choice defends or causes your entire rotation. But as a healer, the impact isn't as big. Take Restoration Druid for an example, something that I have been playing a lot of over the last few weeks. What my Covenant ability, what my Night Fae ability gives me, is that it gives me Convoke the Spirits, which is a good DPS cooldown if I take Boomkin Affinity, and a good healing cooldown if I don't, and a good DPS cooldown if I take Feral Affinity. It's a DPS cooldown, and as a healing cooldown, it's not too bad. But if I take a different Covenant, it's not going to destroy my playstyle. I'm still going to be a Druid, I'm still going to do all the same things. Yes, I won't have that Boomkin burst window, or that Catform burst window that I had before, or that situational big heal, but it's not the end of the world. And so what we've seen is with a lot of these classes, the healer is the one that changes their Covenant depending on the dungeon. So if we're going into a Venthyr dungeon, we have a Venthyr healer. If we're going into a Night Fae dungeon, we have a Night Fae healer. Because being a DPS, it's far less malleable. As a DPS, you need to be able to pump the numbers and take Marksmanship Hunter, which is the biggest DPS class we've seen representation for. Marksmanship Hunter needs Wild Hunt to do their damage. That's the core part of their rotation. Same with all of the DPS classes that we've seen. And tanks, it's the same. When you're looking at a Vengeance Demon Hunter, most of them are Kyrian, to be honest, and the reason why most of them are Kyrian is because you get that additional healing potion, which is invaluable. And obviously Elysian Decree does some considerable damage, so your tank is always going to be Kyrian. Your DPS, usually your Marksmanship Hunter is going to be Night Fae, and your Fire Mage is going to be Night Fae. So you're only left with one other DPS option. Now you can hope that they are Maldraxxus, and your healer can take Venthyr, or they're Venthyr, and your healer takes Maldraxxus. But Giles, I hear you ask, why does one of the DPS have to sacrifice their Covenant? Well, you see, the new MDI rules state that you have to run different classes. You can't just stack 3 Hunters like we used to. You can't just stack 5 Pallies like you used to. Each class has to be different. So what's happened is they've taken their tier list with Fire Mage and then Marksmanship Hunter and then Balanced Druid, and they've gone, okay, cool, we'll just bring 1, 2, and 3. Now Balanced Druid needs Night Fae, it needs Convoke. Marksman Hunter needs Night Fae. It needs Wild Hunt. I think it's called Wild Hunt. And Fire Mage, yeah, they're the bottom of the 3. So they can just be whatever. Tough luck to the Fire Mage. And that's kind of what we've been seeing happen in these events. Now, outside of classes, there was some interesting things. I mentioned in the last video, the thing I was really interested to see was how the maze happened. And I feel like our prophet there, because the maze was the biggest point of contention over the weekend. You see, Blizzard came into this thinking, well, the problem with the maze is the RNG, so we'll just make the route through the maze the same for everyone. Happy days. Now, there's a problem with that. And the problem with that is that they didn't change the symbols to match the route. They just told the players in advance. So the players had these little notes. There was a tweet which I'll try and overlay here, but I'm going to paraphrase it. I don't have it on hand. There was a tweet from one of the players, and it said, "I had my notes, and it was left, left, forward, full circle, frog boy." And that was kind of the direction they got through the maze. Now, when they were doing it, it consistently bugged. Because the maze is RNG, some players were going through, and they'd get the frog guy. Some players were going through, they'd get the centaurs. Some players were going through, and they would get completely different mazes, with completely different lengths and difficulty levels. And when you're in a time attack competition, you just can't have that as a variable. You just can't have the mazes be this complicated. What Blizzard should have done here is just gone, nope, the maze, we can't fix it in time for the event, we're disabling the maze. And just opened all the portals, put all the trash in, and let players run through it. And they would just run through it in a straight line, but so what? It's the MDI. It's not like they're worried about not timing the key. The point is that it's a race. And just race through as quickly as humanly possible. And yes, you can't practice that on the live server, but these players aren't practicing the maze pulls. That's not the bit that they need practice on. It's the section after. It's the boss fights. It's pulling these big packs. We might have seen them just pull the entire maze in one pull and do a pack, which is something that my Mythic Plus group had done a few times in lower keys, where we'd found a way where we could glitch it and pull a couple of extra packs during the maze so that we could skip at the end. They might have done that. We don't know. We ended up having them pick a result that basically wasn't fair. We had a team lose who did a different maze to everyone else, and their maze was mathematically more difficult to do. In other areas of the Mythic Dungeon Invitational, it has been a joy to watch. The hosts this year have been excellent. It's been a true joy to watch. There's a lot of people who are very knowledgeable about the game, trying to guide everyone else through. But I think that's the big problem with the MDI, and it's the same problem that we have with the Arena Championships. Unless you live and breathe WoW, and you play these at a very high level, it's difficult to understand what's happening in any given match. It's difficult to understand what's happening in the MDI. You need these casters to be super knowledgeable and you need them to tone things down. We also need a lot more display on the screen about what's happening and what's going on in these events, because when you actually look at it, yeah, okay, Pally Bubble is pretty easy to see, it's a big old bubble. Demon Hunter going into Met, pretty easy, you can tell what that is. But when something gets kicked, do you know who did the kick? You need kick timers on the side of the screen to know who did the kick, if it's on cooldown, if a kick gets missed, why did it miss? This is information we're simply not getting with the interface that they have at the moment, and it makes the MDI much more difficult to watch for a more casual player base. We need things like big DPS meters on the screen, big raid cooldowns, and we've got the little cooldowns just under their character screen, but it's not enough information, and unless you play that class, you're not going to know what those cooldowns are. How many people do you know that don't play a Demon Hunter, know what Darkness does? Actually know what Darkness does. I didn't, and I play with Demon Hunters in Arena all the time, and they'll say things like popping Darkness, and I know I need to stand in it because it's a defensive cooldown. But what does it do? I don't know. I ended up having to look it up. I guarantee the regular player base isn't doing this. Anti-Magic Zone. Do you know what Anti-Magic Zone does? Most players would just know it's a thing that you stand in when bad is happening. And so we need it to be more readable, but WoW as a game doesn't lend itself to that. The big thing about WoW is how complex and how intricate these class interactions are. And that's why the MDI, I think, is struggling to take off as a big viewership event, which is a shame, because it is so good to watch. It is a thoroughly enjoyable event, and I want more people to get into it. It's a game I'm passionate about, it's a bunch of fun to watch, and that's my thoughts there. Rant over. In other news this week, Blizzard's parent company Activision announced that they were dismantling another studio called Vicarious Visions and merging it into Blizzard to take over from Team 1. Team 1 previously were the team responsible for working on Blizzard's legacy content revival, such as the StarCraft remake, Heroes of the Storm patches and content updates, and the disaster that was Warcraft 3 Reforged. It looks like a new team is coming in to take over that. But one of the interesting parts of that, from an Activision, from a larger gamer perspective, is that Vicarious Vision was the team who supported the other studios, including Destiny 2 and remastering games such as Crash Bandicoot and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Now, it makes a lot of sense for them to start doing this work. The Crash Bandicoot remaster, absolutely excellent. Tony Hawk Pro Skater remaster, also absolutely excellent. What doesn't make a lot of sense from this perspective, though, is bringing them in to Blizzard exclusively to do Blizzard games. Now, I know Diablo 2 will probably be announced next month at BlizzCon Line, with the working title Diablo 2 Resurrected. But it's kind of severely limiting their options moving forward. Being able to do things like Crash Bandicoot and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater just can't be done under the Blizzard umbrella unless Activision decides that Blizzard is going to be working on these classic games moving forward. Which is a shame, because Activision made a shitload of money out of these. The nostalgia factor was super high. Who doesn't have great memories as a kid of playing Crash Bandicoot, or playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater, or playing Spyro the Dragon? Any of these older retro games, which Vicarious Visions were masters of redoing. On the other hand, Diablo 2 is another one of those games, and seeing it get done by a team who so successfully did Crash Bandicoot and so successfully did Tony Hawk Pro Skater is a really good sign for me. I really have high hopes for Diablo 2 as a remake. But in the same token, whenever I feel like playing Diablo 2, I play Path of Exile. Why wouldn't I? It's an amazing game. And yeah, there's nostalgia to Diablo 2, but if I need the nostalgia, I get that hit out of Path of Exile. And Blizzard's not going to compete with Path of Exile with Diablo 2. Now, Diablo 4 is about to come out, and maybe there'll be some competition there, and maybe releasing Diablo 2 in advance will hit that nostalgia for them, and get players from their other big games into Diablo, and then into Diablo 4, which will have a more aggressive monetization strategy, and maybe that's their plan, maybe that's how Blizzard will make money out of it, but I just don't see it working, and I think dismantling the studio is kind of a bad move from Blizzard's part. In other news, patch 9.1 is starting to have some minor stir within the community, with the main storyline of Shadowlands patch 9.0 now complete, and most people either having completed their Covenant campaigns or working towards the completion of their Covenant campaigns within the next week or two. Patch 9.1 is starting to become a reality in a lot of people's minds. Now, yes, I know there's a lot of people who haven't caught up yet, there's a lot of people who don't get to play the game every day, and there's a lot of people who don't focus on this particular aspect of the game. But for those who play WoW largely for the story for patch 9.0 is complete now. If you've completed the raid, which most people have done now on normal difficulty, and if not, LFR will open over the next few weeks, and you've completed your Covenant campaign, and you've unlocked the Twisting Corridors and completed your first run through, you're effectively done. So this has raised a lot of people to ask where patch 9.1 could take us. Now, the wonderful Taliesin and Evertel had their weekly reset come out last week, and it raised an interesting idea, one that I've spoken about before on stream, of potentially taking patch 9.1 to the Emerald Dream. The Emerald Dream is something that we have been asking for as players for a long time. So long, in fact, that I actually had a conversation about it while doing MC progression. I said, wouldn't it be cool if the next raid was the Emerald Dream? I had this conversation back in vanilla, and lots of people did. We've always wanted to go to the Emerald Dream to see where the Night Elf leaders go. I mean, as a Horde player, do I really care that much about the Night Elves? Yes! Absolutely I do. Night Elves are sick, and I don't play a Night Elf because I can't, because I'm playing Horde. But if I was to play Alliance, it would be a Night Elf that I'd play because their storyline fascinates me. That whole nature thing, it was always so sick. And the Emerald Dream would be such a cool place to go. But I've heard a lot of people talk about how this might not be the right direction simply because of how similar it will be to Ardenfield. And to those people I say, I don't care. I want to go to the Emerald Dream. Give me the Emerald Dream. But maybe I want it as a whole expansion. An expansion of Emerald Dream. But being the sister to Ardenweald and a couple of hints that have been dropped, I think it's a pretty good idea. The other ideas that Taliesin and Evertel raised on their video was going to see Helya's domain, which, sure, would be fun. We've fought Helya the last couple of expansions. It would be nice to kind of put a nice bow on that and send her off to damnation and not have to deal with her anymore. Between the cracks where the Hungering Destroyer comes from, that'd be kind of cool. Don't know. Maybe for a patch, it could be enough content. Have a little raid in there, something a little filler for 9.1. Or the Broker Land. Now, the Broker Land does excite me. But I would hope, some part of me still hopes, that the Brokers kind of remain mysterious. Maybe an official link that puts them in touch with the Ethereals, a little bit more lore. But I like the mystery behind them so far. They're interesting to me. I think they're interesting characters. And I'm happy with what we know so far. But I'm not going to be unhappy if we learn more. I'm never going to be unhappy with new content. But interesting things to think about. Are we going to go to Broker Land? Are we going to go between the cracks? Are we going to go to Helya's house? Are we going to go to the Emerald Dream? Or something completely different? I know with where the storyline is sitting, it seems like we're going to have an assault on the Maw. But I feel like the assault on the Maw is the end game. It's the patch 9.3, 9.4 of the expansion, where We've finally done all the things, we're super duper strong, and now we can go and save Anduin. Anduin. But we can go and save that pesky little alliance leader, and everything will be great in the world. So what do we do in between then? Now, this video is already way longer than I had intended to make it. I was hoping for something short and sweet, but it looks like I just got on a bit of a roll with talking while recording it. So I'm going to wrap us up there. Thank you all so much for watching. If you can't get enough mocks in your life, jump by our live streams. At the moment we are streaming on Monday nights, Wednesday nights, and Thursday nights while our team continues heroic Nathria progression. We also have a variety night, usually once a week, but it is on a random date, so tune in when you can. Lately, I've been streaming the game Elite Dangerous, where I fly around in a spaceship. It's always a bit of fun, it's always a nice place to come hang out, and supporting us on the Twitch channel is the best way to support us right now, and keep doing what we're doing. Thank you all again so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye now.